everyone, I am Zazubaar, and joining me today is...
KaijuNoir.
And today we are here to do an in-person review. I can, see him, we can touch. Turn around.
I was thinking, I was trying to go for a card.
Two worlds, one family. One comic book, more likely. So we are here in the on the sunny coast of California, right on the border between Mexico and the good old United States.
Mm-hmm.
I am here at Andres' house. We're still doing the whole SOS Go Hollywood thing, or at least that was the original title.
Right.
Now it doesn't really have a title. Now it's just more of, I'm in California.
The California Adventures of Zazubaar.
Right, because we didn't do any we didn't do any podcast type videos with David. We did one quick intro thing that we won't talk about until at a later date. So who knows how this is going to work out. We still have a couple videos to do, but we figured we'd do this because kind of out of spontaneity, because we were both at we went to Universal Studios yesterday in LA, and they have a comic book store.
Right. It used to be called
City Walk.
Yeah, it used to be called Things from Another World, but then it relocated. But it's still being owned by primarily Dark Horse.
Right. So Dark Horse had a huge presence there. They had an enormous Hellboy bust in the window when you walked in, and most of their stuff was Dark Horse related. I mean, of course, it's a comic book store, so you see Batman and Superman all over the walls too, but and a lot of Buffy stuff. Which I wasn't opposed to.
Surprisingly enough, a lot of NECA figures, Pacific Rim, and especially Godzilla.
Yeah, there were a lot of Godzilla. There was a lot of Godzilla stuff. Which brings us to today's discussion. So we both bought Godzilla Cataclysm.
Yeah,
he's got his copy too. Double vision. So yes, we are going to be reviewing Godzilla Cataclysm today. Both just bought it yesterday. He just read it.
Yeah.
Just finished it. I read most of it last night, and I read the rest of it this morning. So I've had time to let it sit and kind of resonate. So we're gonna do a little review for you today.
Oh, I just want to mention how it's kind of funny how the last time we met in person, we kind of all bonded over Volume 3 of Rulers of Earth. Now here we are reviewing another trade paperback.
Yeah, we're here reviewing another IDW Godzilla comic.
Right. So yeah, Godzilla Cataclysm is the latest. Godzilla.
Well, it was the latest.
Well, was the latest. Well, as of now, Godzilla in Hell
it
hasn't been released as of the time of this recording, but so for now, the latest to be released, the latest miniseries to be released is Godzilla Cataclysm, which is essentially a post-apocalyptic story with Godzilla monsters in it. Yeah,
this book is interesting. I remember we heard about it in July of last year. It was right after G-Fest, and they announced this book, and the premise was pretty obvious given the title, and this was the image they released with the book. Godzilla Cataclysm. It's Godzilla, the post-apocalyptic tales, basically.
Mad Max meets Godzilla.
Exactly.
More like Beyond Thunderdome meets Godzilla.
Yeah, it's Fallout 3 with Godzilla monsters in it, and that's a really interesting premise immediately.
Right.
And we'll get into what they do with it in a minute, but I just wanted to kind of establish that.
Yeah, we almost got a post-apocalyptic Godzilla from the very beginning with Kingdom of Monsters, because Eric Powell, he originally wanted to take the series in that direction with everything just going to shit.
Right.
Just humanity is just so incompetent and eventually leads to the apocalypse. But Toho did not want that. They wanted to have this established.
They wanted more of a status quo
Godzilla universe.
Which is what they have now with Rulers, and thank God.
Right.
I'm really glad that we have these kind of mini-series running alongside, or at least they were. Now Rulers is ending, so we're not going to have this anymore. But I'm really glad we have currently these mini-series that kind of do these interesting what-if kind of things with the Godzilla universe, and then we have Rulers and the ongoings, which are more of a status quo Godzilla universe.
It's basically a lot of these stories kind of feel like Elseworld stories. This one is
pretty much. It's exactly what they are. This one in particular is very, very, and so was Half Century War. Half Century War was this very Watchmen style take on Godzilla, where it was an alternate history and it was kind of going back to the origins of Godzilla. This is a little bit more vague about the whole thing. But yeah, let's just get into it then. So the idea of a Godzilla post-apocalypse is, again, not a new idea. It has never been done officially.
Right.
But it has always been toyed with.
I guess the closest you can say was
Final Wars.
Yeah, I was about to say Final Wars.
Final Wars got pretty close to it, but even still, yeah, that was an apocalyptic movie. The world did basically end in that movie.
But it didn't have it was the apocalypse, but not a post-apocalypse.
Right, we didn't see the world after all the monsters destroyed it. So that's what this is. That was the premise of this. This is a post-apocalyptic world where the apocalypse was caused by Godzilla monsters. Right. And that's kind of a basic setup. And this is very, very popular to do right now. You take something weird or maybe not so weird and say, alright, what would the world look like after this caused an apocalypse? So you have zombie apocalypse, the robot apocalypse, the viral apocalypse, the Walking Dead, all this different stuff. This is very in right now. So I'm actually glad that we got this at a time where all that's popular, because it kind of makes Godzilla feel like just another member of all this. So with all that being said, let's just jump in, shall we? So this was written by Cullen Bunn, we're actually from. I don't know if you are, but I'm familiar with him. He wrote, or he did some stuff for Marvel recently, a couple years back, including he wrote their Venom series when that was still going on, where it was Flash Thompson Venom.
Oh, that okay.
So he worked on that. He's written a lot of horror books. Geekvolution had him on once on a podcast.
Oh, wow.
And I think he did some other stuff for Spider-Man as well. I think he might have written Carnage USA, maybe? No. He wrote a series with Carnage in it. And he worked on that as well. Then we've got art by Dave Watcher. So first things first. This is well written, I will say. The actual narration, the dialogue is good.
The setup, the build-up, the payoff.
It's a very moody book, and that's exactly... Fearing that he was writing it, I kind of expected that it was going to be very moody, kind of very horror-oriented and very grimy kind of Godzilla universe. And there's a lot of blood, there's a lot of gore.
It definitely doesn't have that Rules of Earth feel where it's kind of the characters are a bit jokey with one another.
No, this is not like that at all. This is more
you read Rules of Earth, and whenever there's monster stuff happening, you're like, fuck yeah. When you look at this, you're like, whoa, oh,
yeah,
whoa.
And the fighting isn't as much about the fighting in this book. It's more about
it's a very human focused story.
Yeah, well, not only it's human focused, but more the fighting is way more metaphorical in this than anything else. Because this book, what I like about this book, because I have a lot of problems with it. So, I guess we should start off with that. So, what I personally liked about this book was all of the ideas it put forth in regards to monsters causing the end of the world were really good. So, for instance, you've got, just to get into basics, you've got the monsters basically go crazy for some reason. Because in this book, it's not like they just showed up randomly and then they just destroyed the world and that was the first time anybody had ever seen them. Basically, what I think we've got here is we've got a pretty typical Godzilla universe where the monsters are attacking on a fairly regular basis, but they attack in low numbers and only one city at a time, so it's basically your basic Godzilla universe. And then suddenly, something happens, and suddenly they all go nuts and start fighting each other, and basically have this big war that causes the end of humanity. And this book gets into why and how and all of that in less detail than I would like, but they do get into it. And basically what happens is you've got this post-apocalyptic setting. It's set in Tokyo. There's this tribe of humans who are barely surviving, a very kind of Terminator-esque setting. Everybody's looking for supplies.
Everyone's living in their own makeshift tents, just scavenging whatever they can find from the ruins of the city.
And the really interesting part about all of this, and the thing I knew was going to be the most interesting part, is humans after monsters cause the end of the world. The end of the world and people's reactions to it are always interesting because people feel like they've lost control of their world. And it's really interesting in this case because what that leads to is the monsters are called monsters here, but they're also called gods a lot.
They are actually worshipped as deities.
By a lot of the people. And including, to a certain extent, our protagonist, Hiroshi, who has a very deep connection to the, and we'll get into spoilers a little bit later, but we'll just start off non-spoiler, who has a very deep connection to the cause of the monster apocalypse, and all we know is that he has some sense of guilt about it. And again, the book gets into that later on as to why and how and all of that. But there's a lot of really interesting ideas about the monsters being worshipped as gods in terms of each monster is a different type of deity. So for instance, Mothra is the god of peace, and Ghidorah is the god of the skies. And then there's
Ebra
god
of seas. Ebra of all monsters, surprisingly. I suppose like
some of the monster choice in this was really kind of weird.
It seemed like they were trying to go for the more obscure stuff outside of the trifecta of Godzilla, Mothra, Ghidorah. And
Anguirus is in this a little bit.
In flashbacks, yeah.
Yeah, he's in there in flashbacks.
But we did get to see a lot of the story. Heavily focuses on one kaiju in particular from your favorite movie.
Biollante is basically almost is more important to the story than Godzilla. It's pretty much broken down. It's Godzilla, Biollante, and then Mothra to a certain extent.
And Megaguirus.
And then there's the ending monster, which we'll spoil in a couple minutes.
Right.
But what were your thoughts on this overall? Godzilla post-apocalyptic story. Overall, what were your thoughts?
It's a very decently paced book. It's a very fast read.
We both knocked it out in about half an hour.
It works better as like a full trade paperback. I don't think I would have enjoyed reading it from issue to issue, waiting a month in between each one.
Oh, I probably would have liked this a lot less than I did if I had to read this month to month.
Right. I enjoy the characters for the most part. I really like the themes of death and rebirth.
Those were the big themes. Was destruction, cataclysm, to use the title, and then the attempt to rebuild the world after that. And that's basically what this is about. But you like this for the most part, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I really like the art. It's very appealing. It's quite different. It has its own different feel compared to previous books we've seen before. I especially love the. I think I have a feeling that I like the art better than you did.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna say it is good. I really enjoyed it as well, but I do have some problems with it. But just to give a point of comparison to anybody who may not have read this, I don't know if that's a spoiler, but whatever. You're just seeing monster action basically. If you don't know the context, it's nothing you haven't seen before. It's if you're gonna give it a point of comparison, it's definitely closest to Stoko than anything.
Where it uses like a very specific color palette, where it uses like several colors and then uses them for the duration of whatever scenes takes place in that world. For in this case with the flashback sequences, it's a lot of very bright reds, whereas in the present day storyline, you have a lot of like muddy grays, browns, yellows, maybe a little bit of green, a little bit of that grimy dullness.
Yeah, and the other thing, comparing it to Half Century War, because that is definitely the thing I compared it most to. Just because of the themes and because of the darkness of the story and because of how kind of what if it was for Godzilla, the humans are definitely way more realistic than in Half Century War, and that's definitely. I'm not going to say that's better. I think that worked in Half Century War just to kind of show them being more emotive, but they are certainly emotive in this, without going to that anime place.
Right.
But I like the art in this. The Godzilla is the Godzilla they've been using ever since Rule Wars started.
Yeah, it's 2002, 2003 Godzilla.
Yeah, it's the Tokyo SOS Mecha Godzilla, which is fine. I really like that design.
Yeah, I mentioned it before that is personally my favorite Godzilla. I mean, I have like the final figure right there,
right up there. And if we weren't too tired, we'd go up and get it, but we're too tired. So they use that Godzilla. The designs are kind of, I don't want to say random, but I guess they're not. Most of them are pretty much Millennium. So you've got Millennium Mothra, GMK Ghidorah.
Well, not counting Kaiser, that's pretty much the only Ghidorah we've had. Millennium Ghidorah.
Right. So GMK Ghidorah. I just really need to point that out, just because it's like he's such a different Ghidorah, and we don't know his origin in this. We don't know which version of Ghidorah this is. But then we've got, and then the one that really shocked me was Millennium Anguirus. We haven't seen him yet in this series at all.
Oh, yeah.
And
it looks pretty much like Millennium Kamacuras.
Yeah, it's Final Wars Kamacuras. And Yeah, but Anguirus it's the Millennium Anguirus, and we haven't seen him in comics yet, so that kind of surprised me.
I think that might be Millennium Manda, because I don't think he... But then again, we'd never see the little weird antennas out of his armpits.
Oh, he's definitely Millennium Manda.
Okay.
I mean, look at how serpentine he is.
Right, and the very more, not elegant, but more like elaborate horns.
Exactly. I was shocked to see Manda in this at all, as a matter of fact.
Oh yeah, I see the club right there on Anguirus.
Yeah, you can see the club there, and just, I mean, look at the head. It's
a very scrawny snout.
Yeah, it's not showing Anguirus at all, which I was fine with, you know. And then you've got Kiyu there as the Mechagodzilla they use. Yeah, I liked all of that. But let's get into some of the nitty-gritty here in terms of the characterization and the themes, because this is a very thematically heavy Godzilla story.
And I just want to say that it basically features that very common storyline that I've seen in other what would you say, like, examples of storytelling, where it is one generation, like the older generation, trying to make things, trying to fix or trying to redeem themselves or trying to fix the world for the next generation to enjoy, or kind of like passing the torch off to trying to fix their mistakes for the next generation.
Yeah,
get across.
Exactly. The whole through line here is all about the old world being destroyed because it didn't work. The old world, the old generation made horrendous mistakes that the world, and then the world was ended by who they perceive, you know, it was monsters back then, who the new generation perceives as gods. They enraged the gods, and the gods came in and wiped out the world, and now there's such a small remnant of the old generation left that we can now start to rebuild the world. So we're gonna start to get into spoilers. Before we do that, let's just give a basic recommendation, just that way anybody who might not have read this yet can go off and read it themselves if they like our response. So I am going to recommend this despite the problems I have with it, and the problems I have with it, because I think I meant to say this a couple minutes ago, is number one, I like the art, but my problem with it is that the onomatopoeia goes a little bit off the deep end. I think they went a little bit too far with the sound effects. Every single panel has a sound effect, and the one that drove me crazy is Godzilla's atomic breath. Every single time he fires his atomic breath, there is a sound effect, not around it, but through it. Let me see if I can find an example of it, just that way I don't have to...
Oh, there we go. That's the first time it shows up.
So there it is right there. And you can see that there's a sound effect going through the atomic breath, showing what it sounds like. And doing it once, fine, perfect,
sure,
establish what it sounds like. But every single time Godzilla fires it, through all 5 issues, they show it. Now, I think that's a really creative way to show the atomic breath sound effect, is to show it through it, but we don't need to see it every time. And it kind of gets in the way of the art. I mean, it's a good attempt to kind of blend it with the art. But I think it kind of gets in the way of enjoying the atomic breath. You know, there's that, and there's a couple of other small things. There are some times where I think Godzilla's face looks a little bit weird. There's one I just had. He just looks a little bit too, like, kind of derpy to me. I just had a freaking example of it. Where is it?
There it is, right there. I noticed that the text itself with the atomic break, it clips through the Mothra's wings and then continues after it goes through Mothra's wing.
It's cool, but it's a little bit unnecessary. It's like, we don't need to... Like, if we're reading this, we either are Godzilla fans, or we at least know enough to know what the atomic breath sounds like. We don't need to...
We don't need to see whoosh.
And it's like, look, you can see it side by...
Oh. Pay no mind.
You can see it twice in a row on the same page, and that's just annoying to me. But yeah, there are a couple of moments where Godzilla's face looks a little bit awkward to me. Sometimes when the monsters are far away, they kind of just make their faces look kind of murky.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, especially with humans, when characters are far away, they kind of just like the art is not the art is very minimal in terms of the detail in their faces. But I think that's kind of like a common thing I've seen in different comics.
Right. Okay.
I mean, you can only do so much when you're, doing everything.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And again, I think the art is mostly solid. It's just that those couple things. Writing-wise, again, it's very competently written. There's a lot of really juicy thematic stuff, but go ahead.
But in terms of, dialogue, and especially monologue, things can get quite a bit repetitive.
Very repetitive.
I mean, we get it. The main character feels guilty. You do not need to hammer that point in, as often as you do, as he does here.
This is a very thought-provoking Godzilla story, but it gets a little bit pretentious because of how much it feels the need to spell it out. There were a couple times where I was like, all right, dude, the main character's name is Hiroshi. And he is the old guard. He was around when the monsters first attacked, and again was heavily involved in it. And his narration about how fault the monsters got angry and why Godzilla is attacking and all this stuff, it gets really repetitive.
Right. Even if, with 2016, it kind of deals with that similar theme of we try to control nature, only to have it backfire and blow up in our faces. That theme was, I thought was excellently handled in that movie in 2014, but, they didn't feel the need to, bring it up every single time.
Yeah, I mean, that movie is definitely guilty a little bit of spelling out what it wants you to take away from it. But this book takes that to an extreme of, all right, guys, we get it. We fucked up. Let's move on. And that's something that kind of bugged me. But it doesn't make the themes any less thought-provoking. If you're a fan of dark Godzilla, I'm talking GMK 84, Biollante, Heisei era, Millennium Godzilla stories about the mistakes of mankind and about how Godzilla represents nature punishing mankind. And if you're a fan of the Godzilla characterization of where he is punishing us for mistakes that we inflicted upon him and nature, you're going to love this, or you're going to love parts of it. So if you're a fan of those kind of Godzilla stories, definitely give this a read, because it's a very competent, thought-provoking Godzilla story in that sense. If you're looking for a good fight book, look elsewhere. This isn't really for that.
I mean, there are some decent set pieces there, but for the most part, not really anything yet you haven't seen before.
The ending fight is good, but it's very short.
Yeah, it just kind of you're like, oh, it's over? Oh, okay.
Yeah, and also the thing is that, the Cataclysm itself, I don't think is accurately shown.
Because for the most part, it seems like we're focused in Japan the entire time.
Not only that, but it's also just when we see there's 5 monsters fighting at once: Godzilla, Manda, Ghidorah, Anguirus, and Mothra. And I don't quite see how this fight was any more devastating than any other Godzilla fight we've ever seen before, because we see it for so briefly, and the monsters aren't doing anything that looks all that cataclysmic. They're just kind of doing the things they usually do. Like Godzilla is grabbing somebody, Anguirus is roaring at somebody else, Ghidorah is firing his lightning.
I guess you just happen to have more monsters in one area than normal. It would have been interesting if you would have seen Mogira and Kiryu just getting destroyed by the overwhelming amount of kaijus in one area.
Yeah, exactly. And we do know that not every kaiju we don't see all of the kaiju that are involved in the Cataclysm in this book, because I think there's a line where they appeared by the dozens. So we know that we're not seeing everybody.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe King Caesar and the Gargantuas are out somewhere in Canada raising hell.
Well, we know that we don't see Ebera in the present day, or even in the past. We just see him in one panel. So we know that there are other monsters that we don't see, and Ghidorah doesn't appear in the present day either.
Right.
So
nor Manda.
And does Batra show up in the present day?
No, just Flash.
Batra's in there too, though. Yeah. I keep forgetting Batra's in this. So there's a lot of monsters out there. So I'm not saying I don't buy that they could cause an apocalypse. I'm just saying that they don't show that. And I think it's especially necessary since we've never seen 60 years of Godzilla. We've never seen the monsters do that kind of devastation.
Right. I guess the whole the reason why we don't get to see much of the actual Cataclysm itself is because the comic tends to focus on the point of view of these characters in particular, who can only see it from this one point, can only see this aspect of the Cataclysm.
Yeah, I'm just saying that I don't think that the book accurately kind of evokes in the audience that if this really happened, that it would lead to a Terminator-esque apocalypse we're done. Yeah. There's no society left, that's it.
I also had a thought where let's take a look at Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Even though the majority, all of that movie focuses on characters specifically in San Francisco.
Yep.
The movie introduces us with a good telling of how the world came to be like that.
Right. The Rise and Dawn are designed to convince you, realistically and frighteningly, that this would lead to the end of the world. The events that led up to the apes taking over, sensibly lead to humanity's done, our society's over, and their society is simply stronger than ours. And that's probably what the next one's going to be about. So recommendation on your end?
Yes, definitely a solid recommendation. I'm not sure. If it's possible to get it at like a discount price.
Not yet. This trade just came out last month, yeah.
However, if you do happen to see it like a Barnes & Nobles and maybe you have like a membership or like a discount, like 20% off, yeah, I do recommend it if you can find it at a discount price right now.
Especially if you can just borrow it from somebody and read it. It's definitely worth reading. We may sound like we're crapping on it, but we definitely enjoyed it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't regret buying it. Then again, I personally set out to collect all of IDWs.
Yeah, I still have to get the rest of Kingdom of Monsters and Legends, but yeah, me too. We're collectors, so we kind of have to buy this. But even still, regardless of that, it is definitely worth reading. But
so should we get like just our basic rating? I'm not sure if you still do ratings.
Not for comics, but we can do it now. That's fine.
Right.
You know what? I actually think that it would be better this, considering that we kind of gave it a mixed review. So I'm gonna give it, and we're gonna get more into spoilers in a minute.
Right.
But just for the basic rating, I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5.
Same here. I'm going to give it a very high 3 out of 5.
Of a strong 3 out of 5. That might sound really low, but and we'll get into it in a minute.
But given
I had a lot of problems with this.
But given that we gave, I personally would have. I think I gave ratings. I don't think we did, but I would have given if we didn't give ratings to Volume 4, I would have given it that 4 out of 5. And given that how much I enjoy that, how much I think that book, trade paperback itself was better written, in comparison to that. I mean, it's weird to compare it to that, but in terms of quality,
just in terms of, I'll definitely say I enjoyed Volume 4 of Wars more than this. By quite a little bit. Just because the story was a little bit more interesting.
Right. As opposed to where it ranks between the miniseries, definitely not as good as Half Century War.
Oh no, it doesn't even touch it. Sadly.
I'd say I don't know. Personally, I think it was on the level of
it definitely
on the level of Gangsters and Goliaths.
Oh yeah, I think this is definitely better than Gangsters and Goliaths.
Yeah, slightly better for me, anyway, personally. But
okay, all right.
But I think it is better overall.
I think you liked Gangsters and Goliaths.
Yeah, I like it too.
Okay.
Yeah,
I had way more problems with that than I did with this.
And then as for Legends, I think as an overall package, it's better than Legends as a whole.
Yeah. So yeah, if you haven't read it yet, go off and read it, come back, because now we're going to get into spoilers with our analysis. Okay.
Just have, like, spoilers just flashing. Woo! Woo!
Spoilers. This apocalypse is really generic.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean,
this post-apocalyptic world is super generic. It is every single apocalypse, just every single post-apocalyptic setting you have seen, this is it. It's that stereotypical barren wasteland, Fallout 3, Capital Wasteland style, bombed out buildings, torn down buildings, kind of post-apocalyptic world. And it has very, very... And the best things about this book were the things that it sprinkled in to make it more unique. People worshipping the monsters as gods. The sacrifice. That amazing panel where you see this big crater and it's Godzilla's footprint. That stuff was awesome. I think there's also a building that's all mangled and you can tell that it's Biolante's tentacle grabbing a plane. That was really cool. But aside from that, it's just, I felt that the world itself was way too generic, given how interesting this premise is.
Also, this post-apocalyptic world takes place 20 years after the Cataclysm. So
they say 20?
Yeah, they say 20. So I kind of expected them to live in better conditions than what they were, because they basically live in small little shacks. I'm thinking, is that really the best you could do in 20 years? I mean, the buildings are still around despite being crumbled. I expected to see like more tribes of people, just like or villages of people living in what's left of the city. Given that it's been 20 years since the kaijus have been around.
Yeah, why don't they go into? They don't mention, I don't think anyway, why they don't. The only thing they have really is that the grandfather doesn't like his grandson Arata
being in the city,
because he fears the monsters are going to come back.
This does remind me of a short story. I think it may have been Ray Bradbury, maybe it's not, but it takes place. It was a post-apocalyptic tale of these people. They're like, it takes place like a good like number of generations afterwards, so people kind of view this post-apocalyptic, like this torn down city, as being like this forbidden zone. And people have kind of forgotten the English language, so when one person goes into this city, they find a statue of George Washington, but then they don't even know who George Washington is.
Right.
And like some of the names are scratched out, so it's like Geo Ashington or something.
Right. And they're like, they're like, oh, that's a god.
Yeah, so like this guy must have been important to have a statue. So it's like if they were kind of had that idea of like, oh, the city is like a forbidden zone, that'd be interesting. But considering that there has been no real danger there's no reason why they can't be in the city.
I also don't understand why 20 years is enough time to lead to this complete like ignorance of just like
I figure like after 20 years people would still recognize those monsters as monsters and not gods. I mean
even the main guy is like they're gods, and he was the one who telepathically communicated with them,
right.
Which is okay. So let's get into that in a minute. But anyway, so I just think that this post-apocalyptic world is A, too generic, and B, just not thought out enough,
and
for that reason.
And too recent.
Yeah, I think they should have gone like, I don't know, 50 years, because Hiroshi's old in this, but he's not 70 or 75.
Right.
I mean, he's what, like 50? Because how old is he in the flashbacks when they show him telepathically?
Let's say for the most part he's 40 and he's 60. 60's not really that old.
No, that's really, especially nowadays, that's young.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty spry. I mean, Harrison Ford is like in his late 70s, and
only now is he starting to turn into a zombie.
Yeah, right, exactly. That was a reference to Babylon. But
which we probably can know, but not most people outside of Hollywood.
I think that episode doesn't come out until tomorrow. So if you listen to tomorrow's Babylon, we were in the audience. This world is not thought out enough for my money. And again, that's why I wanted to read it, was because it was Godzilla in the post-apocalypse in a world where he caused it, and I think that more unique aspects of it should have been thrown in to kind of signify that. Here's one thing I don't like. I don't love the idea of the monsters not showing up for 20 years. Wouldn't it have been interesting if it was like a Batman No Man's Land thing, or an Angel After the Fall thing, where the monsters take up territories?
Yeah.
So what if Tokyo was Godzilla's territory?
Yeah.
What if Osaka was Biolante's territory?
Yeah.
And what if America was, I don't know, Ghidorah's territory? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that kind of like a monster stakes a claim in a place, and this is what animals do, so it would have made sense. Animals stake a claim in a certain area, and they take up residence. Now, I know that would definitely require some rewriting in terms of the themes, considering that the monsters here are basically metaphors for nature kind of giving the earth a clean slate after mankind screws it up.
Right.
So I get that would have to change, but why? Okay, so let's say this then. Yeah. Sorry, I keep changing this idea. What if Godzilla wasn't part of this whole territorial thing? What if he stayed in the water and he alone represented that kind of? Because the whole premise of this is that Godzilla destroys the world, or at least partially is responsible for destroying it, and then doesn't want it to be reborn.
Right.
Because Biolante in this, which is why
he wants things to stay shitty.
He likes this. He likes this cataclysmic apocalypse, and the whole reason is he fucking hates humanity.
Right.
And he has a pretty good reason. Well,
basically,
he has a decent reason.
Basically, they tried fucking around with his mind.
So, okay. So here's the problem with this. So this is not new territory for Godzilla's character. He has hated humanity in other things like this for a long time. Final Wars, he hates humanity. And the reason in Final Wars is the classic reason. The H-bomb testing.
Yeah.
They gave birth to him, turned him into a freak, ruined the natural balance that he lived in. So that's the classic reason why Godzilla hates people. This one is a little bit different because this Godzilla and all the other monsters, presumably, were attempted to be controlled by not G-Force, basically. Not G-Force. They don't get a name in this, but that's what I'm going to call them.
It's basically an adaptation of the, what's it called?
Project T.
Project T from Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, which is a very interesting idea that was barely touched upon in the film.
And not much more touched upon in this, sadly.
Yeah, because it mentioned how the psychic, he looked into Hiroshi, right? Hiroshi. He looked into the minds of these kaijus, but he never really described.
We don't know what he saw that scared him so much.
Apparently, so according to this, like they brought not G-Force, brought together a whole bunch of psychics and tried to collect and amplify their power, combine and amplify their powers in order to control the kaijus
and make them more docile.
Yeah, and as a result, they seem to imply that that the humans, they found something in these kaijus' minds that made them afraid. The kaijus read that fear, got themselves pretty freaked out after looking at having their minds fucked around with, and seeing the humans' minds, and which led them to become incredibly enraged. It brought out their ferocity, their savageness, and just made them even more dangerous than they already were.
It did the opposite thing of what they wanted. It made them more aggressive towards each other and everything else. Basically put them in this berserker state.
Yeah. As
Hiroshi describes it. Now here's my whole problem with all of this. This premise would be way more poignant if the humans were trying to use the monsters as weapons. Because again, I think this is all basically a substitute for Godzilla's original reason for hating humanity. It's kind of a modern allegory for that. So instead of using the old tired idea of the H-bomb, let's do something a little bit more sci-fi with it. Give Godzilla a more direct reason to hate people, because now he knows what people look like on the inside of their minds. So he hates them for that. Awesome idea. Brilliant idea. I also love the reverse of that, of somebody looking into Godzilla's mind, being able to... There's an implication that he's still somewhat able to telepathically communicate with Godzilla.
Yeah.
He's at least able to feel what he feels.
But it's never really brought up all that much. It's hinted at.
It's all in the last issue.
Yeah,
very, very subtle.
Right.
Which I guess is a good thing to a certain extent, but I would have liked more of an explanation of it. But what's so bad about people trying to make the monsters more docile? I get that the whole idea of is... We don't understand them, they're above us, the fact that we even tried to control them is completely morally deplorable. Alright, yeah, but it would have made more sense, and this probably would have happened anyway, if they would have tried to use them as weapons. Wouldn't that give Godzilla such more of a reason to hate us?
Yeah.
Who are you to try and control me and make me work for you?
Yeah.
I'm my own thing. That would have been way more poignant to me as a story of Godzilla being angry if humanity would have tried to do something a little bit more morally deplorable with them.
Yeah, something that makes him deliberately get into the line of fire and get himself hurt and possibly killed.
Exactly. And there's a certain level of embarrassment, I suppose, and this is going to sound a little bit weird describing Godzilla's feelings, but in terms of embarrassment and kind of belittling of, how dare you even try to change my behavior? I'm the king of the monsters. Fuck you. But I think that there's a little bit just they kind of just didn't go far enough with that idea. Because when I read this, I was like, they tried to make the monsters more docile, and I was like, so? I was like, what else are they supposed to do? The monsters are tearing these cities apart.
Yeah. So maybe he can't...
Because in Project T, that was the idea, was that they were going to try and use Godzilla as a weapon.
It's a very noble cause, not really something you would feel as guilty over doing, considering the negative repercussions, but the fact that they were trying to control them to make them more peaceful, I don't think that's really something to get really bent out of shape with.
Well, okay, here's the other thing. If we're not going to have the idea of using them as weapons, then what they should have done is really get into what exactly Godzilla saw in humanity that really pissed him off so much.
And we were joking about that a lot.
Yeah, like, did he see, like, what we like to use as porn? Like, what made him so angry? Like,
you like to masturbate to that?
Exactly. What did he deem so terrible about humans that he decided to wipe them out? Like, what didn't he already know about us that really made him go, that's it, everybody, we're done, we're wiping these fuckers out? Not like he communicated with the monsters, but like he was the instigator mostly. At least that's the implication here.
Right, because they made I think the one line they made was once they tried to look into Godzilla's mind, all they saw was a nightmare.
Yeah, basically, and here's the other thing. If you're gonna tease me with the notion of somebody looking into Godzilla's mind, I better know what he's thinking. And we don't get that at all. All Hiroshi says is he looked into Godzilla and he saw, and this is the other interesting idea, is he saw a demon, his demon, and he describes another monster, Destroya,
as his demon,
and I don't know why.
Yeah, it's like
what about Destroya made him his demon?
Yeah.
His demon. So here's where all this comes down, and here's where it is interesting. But again, it's underdeveloped. The monsters, in that respect, kind of become metaphors for the demons of the human spirit. So in our internal demons, the things that we struggle with to be noble creatures, our own horrible thoughts and monstrous aspects amplified as giant monsters.
That makes sense because with humans we try to see ourselves not as animals but as something higher than animals. But here we have this like very primal instinct within us that I guess could have been the thing that would have kickstarted that the events of the Cataclysm. Yeah, and Hiroshi's mistake in this, and he has a decent character arc. It's just that he gets way too whiny about it. Is that his character arc is basically about understanding that nobody is right and nobody is wrong in their interpretation of what the monsters are. Because he looks at the villagers worshipping them as gods as, oh my god, that's so stupid. Gods, they're wild animals. He says that at one point to his grandson. And he's right, but he's also wrong because just because they're wild animals doesn't make you better than them. That's what we are too from that perspective. They're gods, but they're also animals, there's that middle ground of they're basically higher animals. And that's basically the place he comes to in this. And the ultimate kind of culmination of all this is basically the only way, and I guess we should get into this, and we haven't really mentioned this enough, Biollante represents the rebirth of the Earth. Right, because the whole plot centers around Biollante's I guess, upbringing. Where I'm not sure if Biollante was supposed to be already established before the. Oh yeah, because they already
Hiroshi already knows what the name is, so obviously Biollante was around before this.
But apparently Biollante springs to life in the middle of the city, and her I guess you could call her at this point because
they call her in the book.
Okay, yeah, she's basically the. She's what kickstarts all the kaiju action because everyone's going after her. Kamacuras goes after the Kamacuras, which is actually a species, just like Son of Godzilla.
Which was really cool.
Yeah, they go after her for sustenance. Mothra's trying to protect her. Godzilla's trying to destroy her. Right. Destroy is there for no fucking reason.
We'll get into Destroy in a minute.
But basically,
it makes no sense.
Basically, like. Biollante is basically the MacGuffin of this plot.
Yeah, and it's a good MacGuffin because it's also thematically all about. Biollante, to a certain extent, is humanity's salvation. Yeah. And Godzilla doesn't think we deserve it.
Right. And the whole Biollante is kind of like it's a very interesting idea. I think they may have gotten from the Biollante movie, where the whole point of the experimentation that led to Biollante's creation was to try to create vegetation in the deserts, of Saradia, which that Middle Eastern desert.
Yeah, and there was a lot more in terms of why Biollante was created. There was a lot of parallels to the Garden of Eve. What was it? The Garden of
Eden.
The Garden of Eden. Excuse me. Eve is the woman in the Garden of Eden, and kind of all this different stuff. And this book makes really good use of that. That was my favorite part, was how they used Biollante because it was right out of the movie. Right. And we also didn't need the origin in this because if you know the origin, it only makes more sense that that's what she is and why Godzilla wants her dead. Yeah. She's made out of Godzilla. She is there. She is using Godzilla cells created
to do the opposite of what he does.
Right, exactly. Precisely, and that's really interesting, and it makes sense why he wants her dead. Now, here's where it also gets really interesting. So Hiroshi, and the problem with this is that it's spelt out way too much in narration. Hiroshi represents the older generation, the generation
the old vanguard,
the generation that made the mistakes with the kaiju. So only once he is sacrificed and he's killed by one of the smaller destroyers.
Yeah.
Once he is sacrificed, once he dies, then Godzilla decides that Biollante should be allowed to live and give rebirth to the Earth because he is the last of that old generation that made the mistake.
He feels like humanity has paid for its sins because that old vanguard, they're now gone, they're done, they're dealt with. So now the new generation can learn from the previous one and hopefully work towards a better future.
Exactly. Knowing
that older generation can no longer influence the newer one.
Yeah, the line in this, and again, the thing that I don't like about all this is that it's way too spelt out. Is he had realized that his anger had outlasted those ignorant fools who had stirred his hatred in the first place. Again, I love all these ideas, but I just got so sick of Hiroshi whining about it.
It almost reminds me of what's his name? It's just some random guy. You're familiar with his work, right? With the action. I'm a Marvel, I'm a DC. His portrayal of Spider-Man. It's all my fault.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all my fault.
Exactly. That's exactly how Hiroshi is in this, and I didn't like that about it. I can't even say I didn't like the character. We don't get to know any of them enough to say that.
It's more of well, outside of the flashback, it's like everything we know about them, we know based on their actions in the plot itself. We don't really get any real character moments other than the fact that...
They don't get much depth.
Yeah, other than the fact that the grandson and
Arata and Shiori
are have romantic interest in each other because they kind of do that whole cliche thing where it's like they accidentally embrace each other, then they're like, moving on.
All of that was, and what's kind of nice about all that, again, paralleling it back to the Bible, Adam and Eve, Biollante is, I guess, the Garden of Eden, and they're defending the garden from the wrath of
God. God is the one who's kicking them out of the Eden.
Yeah, exactly.
Godzilla trying to prevent them from entering Eden, aka Godzilla blowing the shit out of Biollante.
You can see why this book is such a quagmire to me, because all these ideas are brilliant, but the problem is just, and this is the big problem, so we'll get into Destroyer in a second. I just want to make this general point. The story is just way too drawn out to me, and there isn't enough of a story to really justify just like this thing having its own series. It almost comes off to me as a one-shot.
Actually, yeah, because I mentioned it doesn't feel like it should have been 5 issues, but just like one big, one nice little read.
Yeah, it just, and as that, and if it was a one-shot, I'd probably like it more. The problem is just that in 5 issues, we don't get enough of an exploration of this post-apocalyptic world. Again, that's what I wanted from it.
Yeah, especially when we only have one village to look at.
Yep.
We judge the entire the apocalypse based on this one village.
Yeah, and
it's in Japan, so I figure a city that used to be that big, we would have at least some interaction between different villages.
Yeah, and there also isn't enough of a. And if there, I guess maybe the idea is supposed to be that these are one of the last tribes. I think they say it on the back of the book. And they're one of the few remaining tribes of humans. All right, few. So I want to know who else is out there, and if so, what's their take on all this? We just don't get enough of that perspective, especially in the case of. The world's ended. It's like it'd be nice to know what the rest of the world looks like. Does it all look like Tokyo, where it's all just kind of destroyed? It's just kind of it's a little bit too generic, and these are words that are going to sound harsher than I mean them. It's a generic apocalypse with a kind of shallowness in terms of exploring that kind of world. The shallowness doesn't come into the themes in the story. It's very, very in-depth in that sense and very, very kind of heavy. But I just don't think that it doesn't have that balance of exploring this world and then telling you things and then kind of leading you to take something thematically away from it because it explored that world. I don't think you kind of get that kind of progression in this. That's the big thing that bugged me about this, was just that we didn't get enough we didn't get enough of exploration of the world and of the story
Right.
for the themes to be able to be fully invoked, if that makes any sense.
Makes sense, yeah.
So let's talk about Destroyer.
He's basically there to act as like a final boss.
He is Ghidorah in Destroy All Monsters.
Yes.
Shows up for no reason, randomly. No explanation where he came from, why he is the way he is. He shows up, and then for no reason at all of the monsters decide it's time
He's
to team.
He's the bad guy.
It's time to team up to kill for the monster that is trying to do the same thing that we are.
Yeah.
I don't understand. So Destroyer shows up.
Maybe I want to say maybe Destroyer is kind of like the one kaiju that not all the other kaijus hate. Like,
but why? I want to know why.
Right.
Because he's trying to do the same thing Godzilla is. He's trying He's trying to kill Biollante.
Yeah.
So
it would have been interesting if like if they would have established Destroyer way earlier. And it's described like, oh, he's like a killer of kaijus. He's the kaiju that other kaijus fear or whatever.
Here's all we know. Because everything is shown through Hiroshi's eyes. Again, kind of like Half Century War, but not nearly as well explored.
Yeah.
Hiroshi refers to Destroyer as his demon. That line only makes any semblance of sense after Hiroshi dies, because Destroyer is the one who kills him, and once he is killed, the world is able to be rejuvenated. So in a sense, Destroyer represents the guilt and the horrible things that he did that caused the cataclysm.
That's what they're implying, and thematically it works, I guess, but
why does he say that prior to being killed?
There's no practical reason.
Because we don't see Destroyer in the flashbacks. Destroyer just shows up randomly. And again,
I guess you could say like they mentioned he has a psychic link to Godzilla, so maybe he might have some psychic link that would have attracted Destroyer. I think they implied that.
I think they implied that Destroyer is only showing up. So what happens is they're running away from Godzilla, who's trying to kill Biollante, and suddenly Hiroshi collapses and goes, "Oh no, my demon is coming," and his nose is bleeding. And throughout the book,
they mentioned the nosebleed was something that occurred previously.
So is that building up that Destroyer is coming? But it's like, but I thought that was all because
for Godzilla,
exactly, because the whole time Hiroshi has been praying to Godzilla,
right? In
the same way that the villagers have been praying to the monsters, but he's been praying for Godzilla to stay away.
Yeah, it would have been much more sense if they kind of tricked the audience into thinking that he's praying for Godzilla, but then shows that he's been praying for someone else, for something else to not come back.
Yeah, if it would have been a little bit more subtle, it would have been fine. If like he's praying for him not to return, and when Godzilla shows up, oh god, he's back. But he's not talking about Godzilla the whole time. He's been praying for Destroyer not to return. And what if we learn that Godzilla is not the one who's trying to destroy everything? What if he's trying to protect everything from Destroyer? It would this would have changed a lot of the themes, but it would have made the practical story make more sense. As it stands, it doesn't.
No, Destroyer, as we said before, is there for no reason whatsoever.
He's there for a climax.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know why he's any more of a villain than Godzilla is. He's trying to do the same thing. And do him and Godzilla have a history together? Are we supposed to imply that just because I know who Destroyer is from Godzilla lore? He can't have the same relationship to Godzilla as he did in Godzilla vs. Destroyer because Godzilla's not dead. So I don't know what exactly I'm supposed to take away from all that. The fight is okay, I guess, just from a spectacle standpoint.
But if you remember, this is all rehashed. We've already seen this at the end of Volume 1 of Rulers of Earth.
That's right.
Mothra and Godzilla teaming up to fight Destroyer.
Right, exactly. Wait a second. Who else fights Destroyer in this? Is it just those two?
I'm pretty sure Megaguirus is already out of the picture by then.
Yeah, I think Megaguirus is dead.
No, he crashes through a building and...
So there's Godzilla there. Yeah. There's all the little Destroyers. I did like the effect of the little Destroyers, of Destroyer disassembling.
Yeah, disassembling. That was a really cool, what's happening there? Oh, they're doing that.
And you see the flying Destroyer.
Did we see the flying Destroyer in Rulers of Earth? I don't think so.
We might have. I don't remember though.
Okay.
But I like, that's my favorite Destroya.
Mm-hmm.
Even better, even more so than the big Satan version.
Oh, really?
I love that design. So I'm glad we got to see it in this.
I don't think in American comic book form we still have yet to see the Destroya in its, like, I think it's fans refer to it as the aggregate form, where it's still the giant. It's still basically the crab form, but with
the
larger,
big one.
Yeah.
I don't think we've seen that. So it's Mothra and Godzilla. And I think that's it. Yep.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, and Biollante. But she only helps in the vines. She doesn't actually fight.
Despite still being, like, baby Biollante.
Right. We don't actually see
despite the fact that it's still baby Biollante, it's still somehow able to control these giant tendrils.
Yeah, exactly. And, I totally called that, by the way. First issue, I called that was going to be the second. Like, that was going to be one of the last panels, was the rose coming out.
You expect the ending theme from Biollante. Da, 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 da.
Exactly. So, yeah, it's a rehash of the ending of Rulers of Earth Volume 2, or Volume 1 rather.
I suppose that
I guess the opening fight is a rehash of the end of Volume 2 with Godzilla fighting Biollante.
I suppose, and also it's kind of the only real difference is, it looks different to the artist, and we get to see the red spiral ray.
Yeah, that was easily
cool.
And also, so the way Destroya dies in this, I don't get it.
So he gets pulled down by some weeds, and one blast from the red spiral ray was all it took.
And he doesn't even blow up. We just see the head get fried. Look.
Yeah,
he's still there.
Yeah.
Why doesn't he just disassemble into more Destroyas?
Or maybe he's done for now, but they don't really say that.
Yeah, I mean, I know they're not. I know that it's
like they're trying to
kill monsters.
Right. I guess they were trying to rush into the ending, but without explaining what actually became of Destroya.
Yeah, I mean, is Destroya dead or what? I don't understand.
Can he regenerate in this continuity?
I mean, he must be able to.
Yeah.
There's no way he's not. That's one of the things that makes Destroya.
Oh, I just realized. Random note, but in terms of killing kaiju, didn't they kill Space Godzilla in Half Century War?
I don't remember. Do you have Half Century War over here?
Yeah, but
I'll grab it. Here, you talk to the camera.
All right. Oh boy, venting. I mean, if this was like a podcast, I could possibly vent, but the fact that we're in the middle of this review.
Well, I'll just say that again, the fight. It's not a fight book. It's not about the fights.
Right.
It's more about the ideas, and thus just introducing a random kaiju just for the sake of a fight.
It's the single issues. They're all packed together.
Oh, you have the singles. Okay.
No. Wait. The white backboards. Yeah, all of those behind Rulers of Earth, probably. Yeah, around there.
Oh, I got them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
here we go.
Number 4.
Here we go.
Yeah.
All right, so here we go. I've got
Yeah, because we talked to Chris Mowry on several occasions. Luckily, we talked to him. Even talked to him, met him again a couple days ago because as IDW happens to be have their headquarters here in the city.
So we got a tour of that, which was awesome. Thanks, Chris, if you're listening. I know you're not, but if you were, I would say thank you again.
Thanks for lettering this book.
Yeah, but not this one. The other one.
You're right.
This one. So does Space Godzilla die in this? Yes, he does. Space Godzilla dies.
He gets exploded.
He gets exploded. He blows. He gets blowed up.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Space Godzilla does die. So I don't know.
Maybe it's like one of those one and done things that they were able to get away with.
Yeah, it's like Mickey Sagusa in Legends. Just because it's a one issue, who cares? The last issue is my favorite in the capacity of the themes, and the fact that Destroya looks great.
Yeah,
the art he gets drawn.
The art just does nothing but compliment him.
Yeah, the art, and again, the art for all the monsters is just spectacular.
Although I think with several panels, especially early on with the humans, it does feel a bit like kind of like a watercolor style painting, where some of the colors may mesh within each other without actual black outlines to define the boundaries between colors.
Yeah, I agree. But the monster stuff, the colors are fantastic. again, as much as I don't like the onomatopoeia for Godzilla's heat beam, just the blue against the darker muted colors is great.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, blue
which
and
is why
red.
I'm actually happy they only used the spiral ray twice. Because
it would have been confusing.
it would have been really confusing.
Yeah, but with blue and red, they're two colors that work very well against each other.
Exactly. So yeah. So you have all the IDW Godzilla stuff, don't you? Except for no, you've got everything, right?
Yeah, except for the recent Rulers of Earth stuff.
Well, you have some of it now.
Yes, we do.
we won't get into that. You know what I mean? I don't know what I mean.
I'm gonna get my knife.
I'm gonna go get my knife.
Fresh Prince reference.
Yeah.
We pretty much reached the end.
I think we've basically covered everything. I had a lot to say about this. I don't know if I covered every little last thing, but I think based on what I remember of wanting to say, we covered it.
I think based on this conversation that we had, I found more things to like about the book.
Yeah.
And more things to not complain about it, but I wouldn't say hate about it.
I have one more thing to say.
Okay.
The ending. You mentioned this right after you finished it. You liked the ambiguity. So did I.
Yes.
This reminded me of a recent episode of Doctor Who. I think.
Yeah.
Did you see Into the Dalek?
Into the yeah.
Okay, so season 8, episode 2, Into the Dalek. Great episode of Doctor Who. There's an idea in this that's not stolen from that because that came out after this did, or at least this started anyway. So no, he must have written it before. Anyway, so there's an idea in this that reminded me of something from that episode of Doctor Who, where there's an implication that Godzilla might have realized that no matter how many times you destroy something, no matter how much hatred, violence, and destruction occurs, things will always be reborn. It's a circle. There's a circle of violence and destruction, and then rebirth and peace. It's always going to happen. As much as war is inevitable, peace is also inevitable. Reconciliation, forgiveness, things always come back no matter what. And there's an implication that Godzilla realizes that. That's really interesting. What if Godzilla realized that his existence was kind of futile? And they don't get into that at all. I'm just saying that was kind of an interesting idea that the ending kind of lent to. And it's just kind of there to say, this has all happened before, it'll all happen again. Kind of idea. But yeah, aside from that, I'm pretty much good.
Right. Oh, so as I was saying, looking back. Looking back on this book through this review of ours, I found more things to like about the book and more things to dislike about it. But overall, I appreciate it for what it is. I'm glad we have something like this.
It's good. It's definitely good. It's just not great. I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's a very hit or miss read.
It could have the writing itself. Basically, the writing is like the main issue with the book, and it's could have
plotting and the writing. And I think just the kind of exposition and exploration of its ideas is problematic. And just the characterization too, I would say, of the humans is problematic.
Right. Outside of Hiroshi, he's really the only real fleshed out character.
Yeah, because his grandson they're very kind of
generic,
archetypal.
Right. They have a story arc of some kind. There's nothing below the surface with them.
Yeah. So again, if you're looking for a fight book, this ain't it. There's some cool fights in this. The art is gorgeous, but it's not about the fighting. The action is not what this is about. This is more about the ideas. So if you're looking for some cool Godzilla ideas, look no further. This has got plenty of them. Not enough for my money, given the premise, but it's got some good ones. So definitely give it a read if you're a big fan of thought-provoking Godzilla stories. But aside from that, I think that's going to do it for this review. So thanks for reviewing this book for me, buddy.
Thank you very much for, letting me be on. I guess this is the first time I've really been on. We outside of G-Fest, this is the first time I've appeared on camera, like Captain Logan and Vince style.
Yeah, this is the first time just you and me. This is the first time in a while we've just done a video of just the two of us. So,
just the two of us. We can get just the two of us.
Godzilla Cataclysm. Alright, so that's going to do it for our review of Godzilla Cataclysm. Give it a read is basically what we're saying.
Yeah.
Judge it for yourself. Don't listen to us. We're fucking idiots.
Yeah.
Don't listen to our shit.
We're just some assholes who think we know better than everyone else. No, we don't.
We're self-appointed critics who self-important critics who want to feel important about ourselves. So I guess you could call it earnest. It's about birds. Anyway,
it's about kaiju.
It's about kaiju. Anyway, so not to quote JonTron. But until next time, I'm Bill Worster, aka Zazubaar.
I am Andres Perez, aka KaijuNoir.
And as always, kids, keep Biollante around, just in case you need to regrow your garden. I don't know. Sayonara, kids.
And remember to support your local comic book store.
And support your local comic book store.
I knew I had to say that.
Well done. Until next time, kids, see you around.
Take care.
Fuck this shit!